What if I told you the Blue Jays are sitting on a trade chip they might not even realize they need to keep? Yeah, I know that sounds backwards, but stick with me here, because this situation is way more complicated than it looks on the surface. So the Blue Jays just had their best season in forever, right? They came this close to a World Series, literally 2 outs away from glory. And what did they do this offseason? They went absolutely nuclear on their pitching staff. We're talking hundreds of millions of dollars committed to Dylan Cease, Cody Ponce, and bringing back Shane Bieber. On paper, that rotation looks absolutely stacked, deep as any staff in baseball. But here's where things get interesting. When you stack a rotation like that, somebody's got to be the odd man out, and the rumor mill is churning hard around Eric Lauer right now, the 30-year-old lefty who just came back from the KBO and had himself a pretty solid season in Toronto. People are talking about him like he's already gone, like it's a done deal that the Jays need to move him before spring training even gets going. Tim Kelly, over at Bleacher Report, just dropped an article naming Lowour as one of those guys who could get dealt before pitchers and catchers report. And look, the logic makes sense from a certain angle. You've got this deep rotation. Lowour's making around $5 million depending on arbitration, and that's an incredibly team-friendly contract for a guy who can actually pitch. That combination alone makes him attractive to probably half the teams in baseball. Here's the thing, though. Before we all start shipping Lowour out of Toronto in our heads, we need to pump the brakes and actually look at what he brings to this team. Because the numbers tell a story that maybe gets overlooked when you're just counting bodies in the rotation. Last season, Lowour made 28 appearances for the Blue Jays. 15 of those were starts. He put up a 3.18 ERA with a 9-2 record. His whip was solid at 1.108. Over about 105 innings, he generated 2.2 wins above replacement. Now, are those Cy Young numbers? Obviously not. But in the context of what Toronto needs, these numbers matter way more than people think. Let me paint you a picture of Toronto's rotation right now. Cease, Bieber, Ponce, and presumably Jose Barrios, who everyone thought might get traded, but his contract makes that basically impossible. Notice anything? They're all right-handers, every single one of them. In today's game where matchups matter, where platoon advantages can swing entire series, having Lowour as your one lefty option isn't just nice to have. It's strategically crucial. But it goes deeper than that. Lowour isn't just a starter. He's a legit swingman, and those guys are gold in baseball right now. Out of his 28 appearances, 13 came out of the bullpen, and he was effective in both roles. You know how rare that is? To have a guy who can give you quality innings, whether you need him to eat up 5 or 6 frames in a blowout or step into the rotation when somebody goes down. And let's be real about something. It's February. Spring training is literally just starting this week. You know what happens every single spring? Pitchers get hurt. It's not pessimistic, it's just reality. Somebody's going to pull a hamstring, tweak an elbow, feel some tightness that turns into a 15-day IL stint. And when that happens, who are you calling up? You really want to burn through your minor league depth in April when you could have kept a proven major league arm who already knows your system. The trade return argument is interesting too. Kelly mentions that Lowour could fetch a legitimate prospect, or maybe even a bat to help the lineup. And sure, Toronto's offense could use some help. But we need to ask ourselves what kind of prospect we're actually getting for a 30-year-old swingman making $5 million. You're not getting a top 50 guy. You're probably looking at a team's 10th to 15th best prospect, maybe a solid organizational depth piece. Is that really moving the needle for a team that just came within 2 outs of a championship? Or the bat scenario. What kind of bat are you getting mid-February for Eric Lauer? You're not landing Juan Soto here. You're getting a utility guy, maybe a platoon player, somebody else's roster bubble guy that they're willing to part with. Again, is that really addressing what Toronto needs? Here's what I think is getting lost in all this. The Blue Jays aren't the Rays. They're not operating on some shoestring budget where they need to flip every tradable asset for future value. They just proved they can compete for a World Series. You know what wins in October? Pitching depth. Having that 7th or 8th starter who can step in and not implode. Having that long reliever who can give you 3 or 4 quality innings when your starter gets shelled in the second. Lauer gives them all of that. And he does it from the left side, which creates matchup flexibility that none of their other starters provide. Put him in a six-man rotation, and suddenly you're managing workloads better over a 162-game season. Or keep him in that swingman role where he proved he can excel. Either way, you're better off than trading him for a lottery ticket prospect or a fourth outfielder. The other thing nobody's talking about is clubhouse presence. Lauer's been around, he spent time in Milwaukee, he went to Korea and succeeded, he came back and immediately contributed to a near-championship team. That kind of veteran presence, that adaptability, that's the stuff that doesn't show up in trade value calculators, but matters in September and October. Ross Atkins has a decision to make here, and it's not as obvious as the trade Lauer crowd wants to believe. Yeah, you could move him and maybe get something back that looks good on paper. Or you could recognize that championships aren't won in February with clever trades. They're won in October with the depth to survive the absolute war of attrition that is a baseball season. I'm not saying Lauer is untouchable. If some team comes in and